You know, it's very dangerous to equate ethnically Chinese Canadians with the Chinese Communist Party. And it would be a grave mistake to do so because many, I would even say most, I would even say the great majority of Chinese Canadians love Canada because it's Canada. And although they may have legacy attachments to China, cultural, historical, family reasons, they have embraced our democracy. And to equate Chinese Canadians with the Communist Party and the dictatorship would be wrong. And not only would it be morally wrong to prejudge Chinese Canadians in that way, but it would give a tremendous gift to the Chinese Communist Party, who could say, look, it's just racism. It is just a prejudice against us. Any criticism of communist China is tantamount to criticism of being ethnically Chinese. My point is, the simple fact that Olivia Chow, a Chinese Canadian, has won in recent weeks the mayor's position in Toronto is not in itself evidence of anything other than she has more support in Toronto than any of the other candidates. But there is a big but. And it's that although Chinese Canadians may not want to participate with the overseas ambitions of the Communist Party is here. It is organizing. Rebel News was amongst the first news sources that reported on these Chinese police stations operating here in Canada. Let me say that again. They were Chinese police here in Canada. Now, they weren't laying tickets and prosecuting in our courts, but they were kind of a soft power muscle to intimidate, to organize, to make sure that Chinese Canadians did what Communist China wanted. And that includes, as we learned in various months' revelations, helping Justin Trudeau in the last two elections. Now, here's the thing. News now comes that these same Chinese organizations that have been revealed as fronts for the Communist Party, they in fact were helping Olivia Chow. She denied she had any involvement, but today we'll show you proof otherwise. I want to bring your attention to an article recently published by Rebel News. The headline is, Olivia Chow claims she was unaware that pro-Beijing groups rallied behind her mayoral claim. But we've got a video to the contrary. Joining me now via Skype to talk about this is the author of this investigative piece, our good friend Andy Lee. Andy, great to see you again. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You know, I had that lengthy preamble because I do not want to question the loyalty of any Canadian citizen, whether they're Italian Canadian, whether they're Jewish, whether they're Chinese. I deeply believe that you can be a 100% Canadian patriot, no matter your race or ethnicity. And I believe that because I feel that I am one. Even though I have an affection for Israel, Canada is my number one. I'm only a Canadian citizen, and I only care about Canadian interests. And so I don't want to cast aspersions at Olivia Chow, but you dug up a video that shows she was actively participating with these communist Chinese fronts. It's not an accusation, it's a proof. You've got the video, don't you?
Yeah, so the video was found by somebody that I work with who runs a Substack called Found in Translation. They go through these kind of documents, go through WeChat groups. So these posts were first discovered earlier on in June and were reported on that she was meeting with the Fuqing Business Association, which is an organization whose address has been linked to the overseas Chinese police stations. I'm not going to say the entire thing is a front for the Chinese Communist Party, but we do know that the members who run and who are chairman of this association have gone overseas, met with State Council at Xi Jinping's request. They've been invited overseas and have actually personally met with Xi Jinping. So, you know, not necessarily standard Canadian business when you're going overseas and meeting with, you know, the supreme leader of China. So these are the people who sort of run this association. There's more of them. And so this is one of the resources that Olivia Chow, apparently tapped, if you look at the video, and was aware that to some degree that she was working with this group. And again, it is an important distinction to make. This doesn't make Olivia Chow a Chinese asset. She's not a Chinese asset. I don't believe that that's the case at all. And she has rallied, behind Hong Kongers and Tiananmen Square massacre commemoration ceremonies and things like that. But it does show a troubling pattern where politicians are increasingly using these community associations, and a lot of them genuinely do very good work in the community, but maybe some of the characters also have, an underlying motivation and maybe to influence our politicians on behalf of a foreign government or the Chinese Communist Party, where politicians are seeking out these community groups to get their assistance to help win elections. And it's not necessarily illegal. It's not illegal to support the Chinese Communist Party, as a lot of these groups do. So that's an important distinction to make as well. You're free to support whoever you like, even if we feel that it may be, the wrong position to take politically, but they are free to do that. It's not illegal to do that. So, it's just sort of a little snapshot of a bigger problem that we have. And Olivia Chow is by no means the first politician who's used this network. It's a well-established network. I'm going to say not always, but often liberal politicians have used it. Michael Chan is, one of the big figureheads. Wang Guoning is another person who's been investigated, who runs this and actually went and met Xi Jinping earlier on this year. So, so a video surfaced of Olivia Chow meeting with, the directors, the executive of the Fuqing Business Association. And there was a slideshow given with campaign materials, positions that were needed, volunteers, drivers, people to help with voting registration, fundraising. And of course, that was confirmed in a letter. A letter was sent by the Fuqing Business Association to Olivia Chow saying that they were going to, the National Post got it a little bit wrong. They wrote an article on this as well. But, they said that they went all out. The letter actually said that they pledged their full support. And that's what they did. So there's every indication that Chow, or if not Chow, that part of her team was aware that this organization was throwing their weight behind her and pushing for her to get elected. And again, it's not unusual. It's happened before. It's going to happen again. But again, part of a troubling pattern and increasingly part of an influence op where we might see people with, again, underlying motivators who are pushing to get certain politicians elected, not always liberal politicians or left-leaning politicians, conservative politicians as well. But in general, people who have a less hawkish view on the Chinese Communist Party in general.
All right. Well, let's watch the video. I haven't seen this before. Let's watch it together. And maybe you can give us some commentary afterwards. Let's take a look. There's actually no narration. It's just happy scenes of Olivia Chow at a campaign organization meeting. Much of the slideshow, the PowerPoint there, is in the Chinese language. But I guess what makes this interesting and newsworthy and controversial is who those folks were. This was not some local Chinese language church. This was not the Chinese Student Society. This was the Fuqing Chamber of Commerce, if I'm not mistaken. You correct me if I'm wrong, which again is that front group that housed the police. I think our friend David Menzies went to the Fuqing Chamber of Commerce. He made a lot of jokes mispronouncing the word Fuqing, but these were the folks associated with the Chinese police stations. Here's a quick blast from the past of David trying to track them down. Take a look.
David Menzies for Rebel News here in Toronto. Now, folks, we are still on the hunt to get answers as to why there are 3 Chinese police stations essentially operating out of the Greater Toronto area. 1 in the Scarborough region of Toronto and 2 in Markham. Now, last week we found the address for one of the Markham-based police detachments, if you can call it that. It was at a Chinese business association. You may recall we went out there to visit, not sure if they wouldn't open the door or if nobody was home, but here's how that went. The door was locked and either nobody was answering the door or the business is closed. Why don't we just go and make another house call and see if anyone's home? As you can see, the door is locked. Now, I see a monitor on, but so far nothing. So we still haven't heard anything from that business association. I've left a voicemail, but nothing to report on yet. Now, the reason why I'm here is this is a detachment for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and York Regional Police suggested I reach out to them for answers for this situation, and the Toronto Police suggested we reach out to Interpol Canada. Now, I can tell you in both cases I did. I sent a query to the Media Relations Department of the RCMP and of Interpol Canada. Haven't heard back, so we thought we would just make a house call because we want to know how it is that another nation's police force, and of all the nations in the world, China, is operating here in Canada. Now, the ostensible policy reason is that they're supposedly helping the Canadian government crack down on fraudsters, but we know from a group called Safeguard Defenders, they're a human rights group, they have very serious concerns about these police officers operating on Canadian soil and in other nations. Here's what they had to say in a report, quote, "These operations eschew official bilateral police and judicial cooperation and violate the international rule of law and may violate the territorial integrity in third countries involved in setting up a parallel policing mechanism using illegal methods," end quote. Well, that's pretty disturbing that they're not following the rules. In fact, they might be operating here illegally. Why are we tolerating this?
So that's who these folks were. Am I right, Andy?
Yeah, that's correct. Or she was definitely with the, again, directors and executive members of that association. And like I said, I mean, I hate to paint an entire association with one broad brush. Is this a community association that's, full of spies? No, that's not it. And that's where we struggle, I think, on how to deal with this sort of thing. That a lot of these, these influence operations and things like that are often blended into very legitimate and often good and beneficial community associations that actually do good work. And they're done that way on purpose. It's a very, very intelligent way of infiltrating. And like I said, it's not a bad thing, and it's not illegal for them to endorse her. And when we lack, something like a Foreign Agent Registration Act, a FARA Act, which the United States has had since 1938, and a FARA is just what it sounds like. If you may be acting on behalf of a foreign government, you disclose those activities and disbursements and things like that. And if you fail to do so, you can be persecuted. If we don't have a FARA and these people aren't registered, then it's very, very hard to say who exactly they're acting on behalf of. But this is one of the associations where FARA might apply. Mm-hmm. And some members and directors might have to, especially if they're going and personally meeting with Xi Jinping, might have to register or disclose their activities. Now, of course, this same association, a lot of the key players in it helped rally that protest on June 24th against a FARA, a Foreign Agent Registry, and said that it would be a racist piece of legislation. This is how it's a very, very clever way of operating, and again, often maybe some clandestine or foreign influence activities are blended in with, associations that do very, very good work. And I do believe when, CSIS talks about saying that there's a sophisticated network that's running these operations and influencing our politicians, I do believe that this is likely part of, that network or a slice of it. And there's many, many more that they're talking about. But again, very, very difficult. So the United States was recently successfully prosecuted a member or somebody who is running their overseas Chinese police stations in the United States. And they did it using FARA.
Yeah.
So we have that tool in our toolkit. And the people who might have to register are rallying pretty hard behind it, which makes you wonder. Right?
Yeah. I once hired someone in Washington, D.C. to do something on behalf of Rebel News, believe it or not. There was a regulatory matter, and we had to register with that foreign agent registry. I forget the exact term. We had to do that just to hire someone in Washington to help us with the problem. And, I'm not shy about what we were doing. I'm proud of what we were doing, but it does shine a light of scrutiny on what's going on. It doesn't ban anything. It doesn't ban foreign agents. It just says, we've got to know what you're up to. And how is sunlight a bad thing? Like you say, it wouldn't make anything here illegal. I'm not sure if there was anything illegal, but we need to know who was behind it. We need to know what direction, what money was coming in from Communist China. And it's not just China. I happen to know that every year the Al-Quds rally in Toronto, a massive anti-Semitic just horror show on the streets of the city, is absolutely financed and organized by the Islamic Republic of Iran. So it's China, it's Iran. I'm sure people would want Ukraine and Russia to be registered to know who's doing what, because this is our country. I am so convinced, Andy, that we need a foreign agents registry in this country too. And let Olivia Chow defend herself. Let her explain why she was happy to take this help. I think she's sort of denying it, but a foreign agent registry would make it impossible to deny. Last word to you. Do you think that Olivia Chow is pro-Beijing? You mentioned that in the past she has stood for Hong Kong and Tiananmen Square activists, which suggests she might have actually been a critic of Beijing. Do we know where she stands on these issues today? Not that it really has anything to do with running a city. That's potholes and police and garbage pickup and parks. But do we know if Olivia Chow has an opinion on Communist China in 2023?
Yeah, I can't say. It might be good for her to come forward and clarify this, especially in light of the fact that again, and her, after the story came out, her staff came out and said that, they had not tapped this network. Obviously, video shows otherwise. They did tap this network. Yeah. So, it's very, very difficult to deny that. And it's very, very difficult for her to say that she was unaware. So I don't know what again, I wouldn't say that she's necessarily pro-Beijing having done this. I think, again, it's just a resource and maybe a little bit of an undesirable resource, and she knows that for having met with them, so she's aware.
And it's great to see. I'm so proud of your work, not only on Twitter, but I'm so grateful that you are doing the China affairs beat for Rebel News. And of course, I referred to your story called Olivia Chow Claims She Was Unaware That Pro-Beijing Groups Rallied Behind Her Mayoral Claim. And you can see that at Rebel News. Keep up the good work, Andy.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon. There she is. And she calls herself the Rebel Special Rapporteur on Twitter. And I get a kick out of that every time. Stay with us. More ahead.